Hello and welcome to the Hennessey podcast. My name is Alex, the self-proclaimed host, and we are back with another great episode with the owners, founders, creators, inventors of Hennessey, Hope and John Hennessey.
It's only been 15 months since we podcasted last?
Yeah, we've had a little bit of a hiatus. This is the infamous, notorious podcast that we like to call the Ghost Cast.
The Ghost Cast.
But we are back. We're back in black, ready to go. We've got John and Hope Hennessey here, and we are going to go through today the chronological, fun-filled story timeline of all things Hennessey, personal, business, everything. It's going to be awesome.
And why are we doing that?
Because it's the 30th anniversary of not only the business, but you guys' marriage. So congratulations.
We did it.
Can you believe it? We survived so far.
So lots of great stories to come, but let's just kind of start out at the beginning. You guys met when?
May of 1990.
It was actually June.
Oh.
Early June.
He is the detail man. Oh,
Yeah.
Oops, that's not
Exactly.
right.
That's really funny.
And how did you guys meet?
She's trying to pick up on me in Sunday school class at church.
So not true.
So true.
No. We met in Sunday school at Second Baptist.
Ben Young was our Sunday school teacher.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's here in Houston because you
Yeah.
had just moved here and you're doing
I lived
your
here.
thing.
Well,
I
you've
moved
been
here
here.
in late 82, and you moved here in what, 89?
I moved,
88?
okay, I know that date. August the 17th of 1989.
Mhm.
Okay. And you moved here for work and you're in a job that you didn't like.
Correct.
And your daddy would tell you, if you can do it for a year, you can do it for another year.
That's right.
And
That's
you
right.
kept doing it for a few years.
Well, I did it 1 year, and then the second year rolled around, and I called him and I said, "Okay, Daddy, I did it for a year." And he said, "Well, baby, if you can do it for 1 year, you can do it for 2 years." I said, "Ugh, okay, I can.
Yeah.
You're right."
So
And then at that time you guys met, what exactly were you up to?
I had a asbestos removal business, so kind of an environmental cleanup business, and it was 25, 26. So I guess I was 25 when we met, and was just having fun, and she swept me off my feet.
So you guys fell in love. There's a really cool proposal story, right?
Oh my goodness. Oh.
Back in my romantic days.
Yes.
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 Lay us on with some details.
Oh my gosh. Well, we were going to go to the Houston Ballet Nutcracker in
Yeah.
December of 90.
Right.
And he picked me up and we went to eat at Brennan's
Yep.
downtown before the ballet. And we're sitting down and we're eating. And he says, "Oh, hang on, I got to go to the bathroom." And so I'm just sitting there waiting. And the waiter comes up and says, "Oh, John has a phone call." And I said, "Oh my gosh, what?" And so he said, "Do you want to take it?" I said, "Well, I can take it. Sure." And that thought, okay, good. I can just make that quick. And so he escorts me outside, and here comes John riding up on a white horse
But
Wow.
to propose.
The crowd goes wild.
Crowd goes
Yes,
wild,
I
yeah.
started
White horse.
crying. It
Snowball was the name of the horse.
Yes, and he got
actually.
down on one knee, and I just said, "Oh my gosh, where did you get that horse?" Remember, that was the first thing I said.
Yeah. That's
You guys
right.
went to the ballet and you're just the whole
The
time.
whole
here.
time I'm looking at my hand. I just couldn't believe it. I was so excited.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was December, I guess, of 90.
December 13th,
Yeah.
1990.
And then I don't know if I guess up at that point, I was really into cars. I grew up around cars. Dad was a car guy. My first car was a 69 Olds 442 convertible that I promptly modified the first day I got it and raced that thing all over creation up in Kansas City. And so when we were dating, I think I had my Taurus SHO.
Oh my gosh. And the box phone.
The box phone. And then before that, I had an Audi Quattro Coupe, and I bought a rally car, and I was
That
like,
sat outside my apartment.
our apartment, yeah. And so back in the late 80s, I loved the Killer Bee rally cars, and the Porsche 959 was kind of like my dream car. And I was huge into reading car magazines. So again, back in the day, there was no social media, no YouTube. So if you want to read about cool car stuff, it's half a dozen car magazines, and that was it. And I'd read about a guy named C. Van Toon who bought a Eagle Talon and put a roll cage in it and raced at Pikes Peak. And so we get engaged, and my business was going pretty well and had some money in the bank. And I thought, man, it'd be fun if I could just like buy some sort of a cool car, modify it, and race it at Pikes Peak. And then I read about the Mitsubishi 3000 GT in like early 1991. And I thought, wonder if I bought that car, if I could modify it and race it at Pikes Peak. So, I mean, you remember when I bought that thing?
Well, I thought you went to something, and you were going to buy a Porsche. Remember that?
I was going to buy, there was a state auction when they had a 911 convertible cabrio, and I kind of thought it went for too much money. So instead of buying that thing, I ended up buying the
That's
3000 GT, and
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really know how to modify it, and HKS didn't have anything for it, so I just kind of found some guys to help me modify it. And along the way, I read about a race in Nevada called the Silver State Classic, and then that year they had a race in May called the Nevada Open Road Challenge.
Mm-hmm.
So I bought this car, and we're engaged, and I don't think I had a roll cage in it or anything at that point, but we went to, remember the first race we went to? It was May. It was the Nevada Open Road Challenge. We show up at the Showboat Hotel or wherever it was.
Oh my gosh, yes, I
in
do.
Vegas. And so the very first race I'd never done any racing before, never been to driving school. And so like when I watch these young YouTubers and they're out doing their crazy stuff with their cars, I'm thinking, that was me 30 years ago.
So I honestly didn't know that. When you went to that race, you had done nothing but just your own casual street racing.
Yeah,
You were self-taught.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. Right.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's kind of fun.
And no roll cage. I mean, nothing.
No roll cage. Just
a helmet and some jeans.
Powered by passion.
Yeah.
Helmet and jeans, and he used to wear these tennis shoes. No, they're not tennis shoes. These little slip-on saddle Oxford type of penny loafer things that no socks.
Oh my god.
Boat shoes, yeah.
His boat shoes.
Yeah, my short shorts.
And his short shorts.
Yeah. So
and he had some early success, right?
Yeah, so we modified that car, did an exhaust, and turned the boost up and a few odds and ends. And so went to the Silver State race, went out to Nevada, and before you could run the race, the 90-mile where they closed the highway down north of Vegas, they would require you to do this qualification process. I'm like, okay, fine. So we're out on this road course, never been on a road course before, and was having fun. I went wide on a turn. I ended up dropping a wheel and tire off of one of the turns. When it came back on, it hit the concrete, and it dented the wheel, and it punctured the tire. So this is Friday. The race is on Sunday. So we go to Discount Tire.
Uh-huh.
We get a new tire, but we didn't bring any spares. Drove the car there, and I didn't know any different.
Well, I flew in.
You flew in. I thought everybody drove to the races and drove home.
No.
And so I had brought a mechanic with me, and he says, if we take a torch, I can heat this wheel up, and we can just get a hammer, out the wheel.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, yeah, that's fine. It held air, and it balanced relatively good, and drove up there. And so come Sunday morning, I kiss her goodbye and get in the car, and there, in front of me, this Pantera takes off, and he's gone. They let the cars go one at a time, and I get the green flag. I go, and before the race, I'd asked some guys that had done the race. I'm like, what class should I enter? And they're all like, oh, you shouldn't try to do anything over 140. I'm like, I think I can go faster than that. No, just enter the 140 class. So Pantera takes off ahead of me. He's hauling butt. I take off. I'm rolling through the gears, and I get it in fifth gear, and all of a sudden I start thinking, don't I have a tire up there up front that was on a wheel that has a big dent in it? And we just heated it up and hammered it out. And so I started to get, my right foot starts twitching on and off the gas pedal. I'm like, that sucks. I can't go fast if I don't keep my foot on the gas. So I take my left foot, mash on top of my right, and then I notice that the Pantera in front of me, I'm catching him. And now all of a sudden I go from being nervous to like competitive juices are flowing. I'm like, I'm going to catch that guy. And I passed him, and I thought, well, let me see if I can catch the next guy. I passed like 20 cars and got to the finish line. And I had 164 mile an hour average, so it took me 34 minutes to go 90 miles, and I was beyond hooked at that point.
Yeah.
So
never look back. So first race, no racing experience. 91 was a busy year for you guys. What did you think at that point of John and his hobbies and his passions, and where were you at?
Well, I'm a car girl.
Right. Because your daddy had a dealership.
That's right.
So it was in your blood,
Let
too.
me tell you how much of a car girl she is. So I didn't even realize it at the time, but something came up in conversation within the last few years, and I kind of started thinking back to 91. And so I had this 3000 GT that had this full roll cage in it, and she never complained one time about getting in and out of that thing. It had straight pipes. It was loud. It had a parachute hanging off the back.
Well, you had to pull me up out of it every
and
time.
We went everywhere in that thing. When we went to Pikes, I went to Pikes Peak, raced there back when it was all dirt. That was really cool.
We had so much fun.
And I picked her up from the airport, and I didn't win anything, but I finished the race. and I'm glad I did it back when it was all dirt. And we went to Aspen afterwards and just drove around, had a good time. But she never once complained about it. So that's what I was telling some young whippersnapper. I'm like, if you've got a girl that'll get in your race car and crawl in and out of a roll cage and not complain about it, you better put a ring on that finger because that's a good deal.
Yeah.
So
you were out kicking your coverage, so you locked it down.
Oh, I had to lock it down.
Uh-huh.
So,
Yeah.
yes.
So end of the year, you guys get married.
Yep.
And then you decide, well, if I want to keep racing, I'm going to need some more money.
Yeah, so we went to Bonneville, set a record there. That's another podcast story for down the road. A lot of funny stories there. Went back to the Silver State in September and won the Unlimited class.
That's when you hit the buzzer.
Yeah, I hit a buzzer. So like
iconic photo.
Yeah, she comes up and sees the car and she's like, "What?" And hit this huge,
Mm-hmm.
big as a turkey buzzard. Anyway, so I learned the first rule in racing, and that is if you want to make a small fortune in car racing, you start with a larger fortune. And so we get married in October. We go on the honeymoon. We bought a house. We bought furniture. And after all that,
I want to know. I hear you
Well-
say what furniture. We bought a used washer and dryer from some guy
honey,
off a
it
motorcycle.
all costs money. It all costs money. My point that I'm making is that I'm not doing my construction business as much because I'm having fun with you in the race car and doing all this stuff. And then reality sets in. I'm like, man, my bank account used to be a lot higher than it was back then. So I thought, gosh, I wonder if I could create a business to modify cars like the 3000 GT and the Dodge Stealth, kind of like Roof did with the Porsches and Carroll Shelby did with the Mustangs and Cobras back in the day, Reeves Callaway with the Corvettes. So I came to her, this is like, we'd been back from the honeymoon for a couple weeks. I'm like, honey, I think I'm going to start this car business to modify cars. She's like, what? 30 years later.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
you're doing what?
Well, so I had to get a job.
Right. And
Because-
you
You had
guys
a job.
you guys lived off your salary, right?
Yes.
Yeah, she had a job. So for the first
yeah.
so for the first 2 years of the business, so 91 through 93, all I'm trying to do is make enough money to go to the next race.
Yeah.
I'm not really thinking about scalability or is this a viable business? I'm like, this is something that we had gotten some notoriety. We'd gotten some write-ups in some of the magazines, and guys from Auto Week and Hot Rod Magazine were like, who's this guy that just drove here to the race and then thought he could just race and then drive home? And I'm like, I didn't know any better. I mean,
Right.
I'm literally at Pikes Peak and I get up to the mountain and there's all these crews and rigs and whatnot. I just drive up there and I pull out my floor jacks and my spare wheels and my
All
luggage.
from your trunk.
A lot of the hatch of the car.
Yeah.
I got stuff crammed, jammed in
Yeah,
there.
no trailer.
Uh-huh.
And so I just thought people started calling. I don't know how they got our number, but we got phone calls after that year, and people wanting to remember. Like our first customer, I think was Tom Upton, came over to the house and bought some
that's
turbos.
so nice.
Our very, very
That's
first
right.
customer.
He was
Yeah.
so nice.
Yeah, had
That's
a Dodge
cool.
Stealth. So really in the formative years of the business, there was no plan. It was just like our relationship, marriage, family, and the business all powered by passion.
Yeah.
The things that we didn't know we had, we didn't know we didn't have them. And we just figured, when we get to that, we'll figure it out. And so,
And the Gen 1 Viper comes out in 92, right?
so the Gen 1 Viper was actually, model year was a 91, but they didn't come out until March of 93.
Okay.
And there's a guy in Dallas that had one, and he called me up and said, hey, I want to run it at the Silver State. I said, no problem, I can help you do that. And we got the car, and I said, I bet we can get another 100 horsepower out of this car. So I made a deal. I said, look, I'll modify your car for free and prep your car for the race. And after the race, if you let me take it down to LA, I'd like to take it to Car and Driver and CarCraft and Hot Rod and Motor Trend and a few other magazines. He agreed to do that. And gosh, when those articles came out, I remember
the phone was
distinctly-
ringing.
Yeah, I mean, Jay Leno calling up. I'm like, hey, John, it's Jay Leno. I got a Viper. What can, sounds like a UPS truck. What can you do for me? And so,
Yeah.
so anyway, so that was probably a pretty big pivotal moment in the business, in that now all of a sudden this is this cool car. Like, why would anybody want to modify a Viper? It's already really fast. Anyway, how many times have we heard that over the last 30 years? Why would anybody want to modify this
It's
car?
never
got
enough.
It's never enough.
It's never enough.
Yeah.
So you pick up some steam with the Vipers. 94 rolls around. First of 5 children is born. The business is growing.
Yes.
John Patrick Hennessey is born. And then you're kind of steamrolling through the rest of the 90s, right? You're having kids.
So we're steamrolling all right.
You're
Yeah.
growing the business. Doing great on Vipers, setting
So
some
we have,
records.
5 kids in 6 years?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
94 to 2000, right?
So now today they are...
August of August 1994 to August of 2000.
Wow.
26, 25, 23, 22, and 20.
Mm-hmm.
And the two boys that are 22 and 23 share her birthday.
Yeah.
They
You
all
gave
three
birth
have-
on your birthday
Yes.
2 years in a row.
back to
That's
back.
back to
unbelievable.
Irish twins for her birthday.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, have a bunch of kids. 2000 rolls around. Vipers are still doing great.
Yeah.
Maybe the LS1 is kind of around now. Did you make any pivots?
Back in the mid to late 90s, I mean, the Viper really put us on the map in terms of, I would say, from 94 through 2004, we were on the covers of dozens of car magazines, Motor Trend, Car and Driver, Road and Track, multiple times, and not just like a little picture, but like the whole feature of the cover. And so that, I think at that point, somewhere along the way, maybe we'd been in business for about 10 years. I thought, gosh, are we a brand? Are people like coming to us because they know who we are and what we do? So anyway, I just wanted to kind of set that stage. Like, I mean, we used to be in an airplane hangar at West Houston Airport, and at one time we'd have 30 or 35 Vipers in there. Kind of crazy.
It was
Wow.
crazy.
And so, but back into the early, I guess I think.
And you had maybe what, 5, 6, 7, 8 employees at the most in those days?
No, we would fluctuate. Maybe between 8 and 15.
Okay.
I think for the first, until we moved out here, until we bought the racetrack, we never had more than maybe 15 employees.
Yeah.
Well, I
and-
think 8 to 7 was a little bit more accurate.
No, I was the one here working with them. You were wrangling kids, so I mean, it wasn't for very long that we would have 12 to 15, but we had upwards of 12 at different times. I think one of the things that's probably needs to be discussed or just mentioned was back in those days, we were great on marketing and product development and promotion, and I didn't really have the operational team to kind of make sure we're
you were
ordering
the
parts.
team.
Well, I was selling it.
You would sell it all, and then you would buy all the parts, and
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
somebody
Yeah.
would build
Yeah.
it. I mean, that's
Yeah,
that's
that's
absolutely crazy.
That's
that was
exactly
kinda
right.
crazy.
And some stories I've heard from you about marketing in those days,
Right.
you would get a mailing list for everybody who owned a Viper, or
Yeah.
bought a
Oh
Viper,
my gosh, that
and you
mailing
would
list,
send
I
out
forgot.
VHS tapes.
Right.
That's
yeah.
right.
And what was
yeah.
your ROI? Your return? What was your ROAS? Return on ad spend on that?
Oh gosh, I would say that if we end up spending a couple $1,000s mailing that stuff out, it would lead to 6 figures worth of business.
That's
It's
unbelievable.
Pretty strong.
Yeah. That's like the best form of
40 to
marketing
1,
ever.
something like that.
Hey,
yeah.
remember the receptionist that we had one time that I was over there and at the office. I'm not sure why. Probably taking somebody to the doctor.
Right.
And she walks in and says, somebody called, but I told them that you had said, I don't want to be bothered or whatever. And somebody called and she said, oh, he's here, but he said he doesn't want to talk to you.
Yes. No, I think she said the exact words. She says he didn't want to be bothered. Anyway.
That's funny.
Oh, my
Yeah.
gosh.
We've got
So-
plenty of stories.
So throughout all this, you're a car girl. You're all about it. You're inside.
Yeah.
And then you have a Need for Speed story too. So you were in, from everything I remember, you're in an M5, right?
Yes, silver. It was just drove like a
It
dream.
was what gen M5?
E39.
E39 M5.
Uh-huh.
Super sweet car, by the
Oh
way.
my gosh,
Yeah.
it was so
and
awesome.
you're cruising down the road with how many kids in the car with you?
Well, I don't have any kids, but I have 2
Oh, okay.
car seats in the
Oh,
car.
okay.
And I'm pregnant with Riley.
Pregnant.
Right.
Okay.
Number 3.
Yeah.
And I'm driving because I've got very limited time with my babysitter. So I'm driving like crazy down I-10 to go update my license and try to find out how to do my inspection sticker because that's what I had to do. And
Cops trying to tell her while she's going on the road.
I'm driving like crazy, and there's a policeman on a motorcycle right next to me, and he's like waving his hand and waving his
Yeah.
hand, and I kind of look over and I'm like, he is crazy. What is he trying to do? So he gets up real close to me, and he's telling me going like this, telling me to roll the window down. So I roll the window down. I said, I'm driving like 70 miles an hour down the highway, and he says, pull over, pull over. So I pull over, and then I get a speeding ticket.
Well,
But-
no, the thing is, he was trying to tell you about your inspection sticker was expired
But he's
while you're driving.
So
While I'm
dangerous.
driving.
Yeah.
The moral of the story is policemen don't always know when their person they're pulling over is pregnant, but when they're pregnant, their hormones might be more in charge of what they're saying than.
Oh, I think that's
Is
right.
that a different story?
No, well, actually,
Well, there's that story.
And
Then there's the
there's
time we were going out of town in separate cars, and you got busted for going 104.
108.
One way.
Right.
Okay, we're
Need
gonna
for speed,
get right
baby.
down to the
Yeah.
business.
And I was actually pregnant again on that at that time.
Yes.
With
There's
Cole.
another time right after we
dear.
bought the racetrack. I had a Dodge Magnum station wagon.
Oh yeah.
And we're all out here at the racetrack working, and I'm working the front booth, and she's with the kids.
The kids and I are working the concession stand.
And around 11:30 at night, we close, and she's like, I think I'm going to have to get some coffee. I'm tired. I'm like, I'll show you what you need. I bring her over to the starting line and show her how to do a burnout. And
Yes.
She makes a run
in
down
my flip-flops.
in your flip-flops.
That's awesome.
And she was all jacked up on Mountain Dew after
Yeah.
that.
I went home and cleaned the kitchen
There you
and
go.
washed a bunch of clothes. I was
So
So with every business, with every marriage relationship, there's always some bumps in the road, but
Yeah.
kind of your first major bump in the road was 2001.
yeah, I mean, we were at the West Houston Airport in a couple different hangars at different times from, maybe 94 through 01. We lost our lease. We had to move, and literally the day we were moving was 9/11, and we went probably 3 months where we didn't have any orders of any
Zero
kind.
orders.
We went from having a healthy business and money in the bank to struggling. And I think the thing that I look back in those days, in the after being in business almost 10 years, my kind of self-awareness thing would be, again, I was a good product guy, promoter, marketing guy, could sell the product really sold itself. But I knew kind of at that time I needed to have, whether it's, having accounting so I can have banking, having a support team for customer service and ordering parts and things of that nature. So, we as the family grew, that was kind of 5 kids and a wife at home. That was pretty good motivation to grow the business. And so, so we had a year or two that we had to kind of overcome some delayed, products and projects and, some unhappy customers we had to take care of. But we continued on,
So
and the
you
business
you
just
pressed
kept growing.
on, you made it through the rough patch.
Mhm.
You're kind of getting towards the mid 2000s,
Yeah.
and in 2004, you have a big idea:
I did.
buying a racetrack.
Oh gosh, yeah, I've had a lot of big
Oh
ideas.
my gosh, that was a,
Well,
So
there's
how-
this recurring theme. So over 30 years, and she can talk to this, like just about every time, like, okay, we have baby number 5, we need a bigger house. Well, instead of the house or the remodel in the kitchen or the whatever, I'm like, well, I think I want to go do this, buy this car and do this race. Or so 04
That's
was a big
exactly
deal in
right.
that the business was doing well. We'd overcome the bump in the road from 01. And so this racetrack, Lone Star Raceway, was an 8-mile drag strip that we had come to a few times, but for most fast streetcar guys, 1/8 of a mile isn't enough
Right.
real estate to get going very fast. So back in those days, the NHRA track in Baytown, that's sponsored by Pennzoil now, if you went under 11.5, you had to have a roll cage. So we would go to San Antonio. So we're driving by here one time, and my mechanic with me says, "Here, that racetrack's for sale." So we bought the track and
Casually.
casually,
Mhm.
we got a good deal.
Yeah.
we
with
got
the
a great deal.
with
Yes,
the
we
goal,
did.
and the vision was, well, gosh, maybe we could move our business here and have our own,
Mhm.
workshop here and have expand the track to maybe a 1/4 mile, then maybe at some point have a road course. And so anyway, we did do the 1/4 mile, and then we're in our building now that's, we've expanded it
Yeah.
4 or 5 times, and we're 51,000 square feet
So
now.
04 bought the track, expanded to a 1/4 mile. 07 moved the business here.
Yeah, 07, gosh, that was another time when the business really didn't. Well, one thing I learned in 07, 08, when we moved our business, that's a massive distraction. So if you're trying to move and build construction, and we moved in here, we didn't have any power, so we had to have a generator. I got out of my lease early, so I'm like, okay, I can save whatever that was, $80,000 a year off of that lease. We didn't have a paid parking lot. We had a generator. We didn't have any offices.
It was so crazy.
It was
Oh
kind of
my
crazy.
gosh.
And so I look back at that, and that definitely had an impact on the business, which then led me to make this really dumb decision to take on a partner. And we're not going to talk a ton about that,
Correct.
but we had a partner involved in the business
So
from.
second major bump in the road.
Yeah, well, it didn't start off as a bump in the road, but I think suffice to say that the partnership didn't work out. The partnership ended up in divorce.
Yes.
And
So we'll get to that later.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
So you took on the partner. Things are blowing and going, and it's not all bad at first. Gen 5 Camaro is getting huge,
yeah,
right?
I mean, one thing back up a little bit. So like in that 2004 through 2008 timeframe, we're doing these like magazine shootouts, and so one of the big shootouts we did was with Road and Track, and they wanted to see which car could go from 0 to 200 in the shortest amount of time. We brought a twin turbo Viper to that. There was a Bugatti Veyron at that.
The blue Fly Navy
right,
Viper.
the Fly Navy car.
Oh, yes.
So we
Yes.
had we got to 220 seconds. The Bugatti did it in around 24, and so that was great for business. But that another recurring theme besides just constantly being able to push through. We were just a passion for each other, our family, and for our business and our customers and our cars. Was we didn't rest on our laurels for very long. So covering the magazine, beat the Bugatti by 4 seconds. What's next? And we started joking about, well, what if we took a Lotus Elise or Exige and we took out the little Toyota motor and we put in a twin turbo V10 in there? What would that?
And
so anyway, I just didn't want to miss that.
Yeah, that dream was born. The idea of the Venom GT was born about when? 2007?
2007, and I think we did some renderings, and I was at the SEMA. I just had some renderings in my backpack of something that I thought that we might be able to build. I think we were just calling it the Venom GT concept car, and some vlog guy says, "Hey, Hennessey, what's new?" And I just pulled some pictures out of my backpack, and they went viral within a couple weeks. A guy from Dubai called up and says, "I want to order one."
That's crazy.
So that
then
was like there was never.
So then it was like, okay, this crazy idea is now like, okay, well, how are we going to do this?
All right, so
Correct. How are
well,
we
yeah,
gonna do
that's
this?
a whole. I mean, there's a lot of things we'll talk about today that we could podcast for a whole hour on in the future.
Yeah.
Well, can I interject one thing?
Sure.
When you say that was born in what would you say 2004 or whatever?
The Venom
7.
GT idea was like 2007.
What'd you say?
2007.
Okay.
And what were we
that's
trying to do then? In 2007,
Well, just a minute.
instead of buy a house, we built the Venom GT, right?
I don't want to even go there right now.
Come on now.
No, what I'm saying is, even when we were first married,
Yes.
and we would go to all the Rockets basketball games, and it was
Yeah.
just me and you.
Right.
We would go eat at Houston's, and you would take their big white paper
Oh, yeah.
napkin, and you would draw. You would draw car
Yeah,
stuff. You would
sure.
draw a car. And I remember asking you, well, do you think you'd ever want to do your own car?
Yeah.
And what'd you say?
Yeah.
That's right.
Sure. Yeah. Sure.
That's cool.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's a cool memory.
Yeah.
So prototype, that was the first Venom GT prototype was like 2009. There's a lot of other stuff.
Yeah. There's a lot of this stuff
That's
going
on in the
back
business.
in those days. Yeah. The
V2 CTS-V,
Yeah.
C6
So
ZR1.
the quick story on that. So like we were really exclusively Viper from probably 95 through 2005-ish, something like that. And so what we found during that period of time was when the Viper was really popular, our business was humming and we were super busy and very profitable. But at times when the Viper transitioned from the Gen 1 to the Gen 2, there was like a 6-month gap and we're like, oh man, what are we going to do now? Now when the GTS came out, it took right back off.
Yeah.
And so I guess around probably in 05, I realized that we needed to have some more diversity. And so back in the 90s, I had a chance to meet Bob Lutz, who was the president of Chrysler then. He became a customer along with Bob Eaton and Francois Castang and several other of their executives. But I got to kind of connect with, and I could podcast about Bob Lutz and just Bob Lutz stories. What a great guy. But when he left Chrysler when they were acquired by Mercedes, he ran a battery company for a while. Then he ended up at GM. And I'm like, oh, Bob is at GM. Their vehicles are going to get a little more spicy and a little more powerful and give the Viper a better run for its money. And then that's when we started hearing about, the Gen 2 CTS-V, the Blue Devil ZR1 Corvette. And so those were cars that I'm like, wow, if Bob is there, his fingerprints are going to end up on that product.
Yeah.
We better pay attention. And this was also around the time that the Viper kind of lost popularity when the C6 Z06 came out around about 07.
Okay.
And that was just a faster, better car for less money. And so that's when we started making the transition away from the Viper and doing other things.
There's a lot of the Challenger, the Charger.
Yeah, we did a lot of
some of
those.
that
And then
stuff.
when the Gen 5 Camaro came out, that was
Major product.
massively popular for us, as you know. And then, fast forward to, back in these days, it was like, you almost have like these timelines of the business, but then we have 5 kids in 6 years, so there's all this family stuff going on too with the kids.
Well, you would go to all these different car things,
And I'm still
would,
super competitive, so I always had somebody I wanted to beat in a race or an event. Or back in those days, it was the automotive media. They're like, oh, hey, we've got a shootout. We never said no to a shootout. It's like, oh, you've got a race and it's going to be on the cover of the magazine? We're in,
Right.
So anyway, she's wrangling kids, and I'm.
But people would say, "Oh, are you married?" And you said, "Oh yeah, I'm married. I've got 5
they didn't believe
kids."
me for a while. Yeah,
And because I was so busy, nobody believed you. And then
Yeah.
one time I went to something, and they were like, "Oh, Hennessey, you are married. You do have kids."
Well, it's funny. So the Viper people would have every other year there would be like a big gathering of owners, and so we would not see people for 2 years. And
Oh my gosh, I was pregnant at every single one.
yeah.
So you made a lot of pivots towards diversity, and then at one point, when the Gen 1 Raptor comes out, somehow
Gen 1 Raptor.
one of those things comes in, and you're
Why
like,
would
well,
anybody want to modify a truck? I think
Exactly.
up until the Gen 1 Raptor came out maybe in 2009, and I thought, why would anybody want to modify a truck? Up to that point, we'd modified in the course of 18 years at that point, maybe a dozen trucks. I'm like, why would anybody want to put a supercharger on a truck or whatever? So Raptor comes in, nothing available for it. We're like, okay, well, we can put twin turbos on it. It's a 5.4 liter Ford. So we put a couple small turbos on it, put on the dyno, made 600 of the wheels, put the video out on YouTube, and we got a call from the guys that were producing Top Gear USA. It hadn't come out yet. They're like, we want Tanner Faust to drive your Raptor truck against a Halo Skydiver. And I thought, that sounds really cool. And the old partner is like, oh, they're going to destroy our truck. I'm like, yeah, they're going to destroy our truck. That's what Top Gear does. But we'll get a lot of phone calls, a lot of business from it. And so we end up buying a truck. I'm like, what's a cool name for this thing? We ought to call it like Velocity and Raptor. I'm like, VelociRaptor. So we branded it, sent it to them. And within the first hour of that show coming out back in 2009, I think it was, we got like 100 inquiries. And since then, we've modified thousands of VelociRaptors. Hugely popular, and it's like if the Viper was kind of that pivotal, iconic vehicle that we built in the early days, that was Gen 5 Viper or Gen 5 Camaro was huge for us. But at that time, we didn't really know how big the Raptor was going to be, and still to this day.
Right.
Yeah.
So at this point, you're coming around 20-year anniversary. You have a bunch of really cool names that you've done work for: Tim McGraw, Tony Hawk, Tim Duncan. Lots of cool guys.
Yeah.
And then 20 years hits. There's a really cool guy that you knew from back in the day, John Heinricy.
John Heinricy.
And he kind of joins the team a little bit.
Known as a special man.
Oh, that's his name. But
the special man.
Our kids could not pronounce Heinricy.
Yeah.
Even though it's close to Hennessy.
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So the kids would ask me, well, where's Dad? Or who's this man Dad's bringing home for supper? And I would say, it's the special man.
Yeah. Dad's working with a special man.
Yeah.
And
So
these kids all just know him by this as a special man.
Yeah.
They still refer to him that.
For a long time, like Savannah probably didn't even know his last name was really Heinricy for a long time.
That's so funny.
But-
I just read online somewhere that he had retired from GM and a
famous GM engineer.
Yeah, I mean he's like the Valentino Balboni of General Motors products. I mean he's a very accomplished racer, 1,000+ laps at the Nürburgring, first driver to go under 8 minutes in a production sedan at the Nürburgring. And so I called up or texted a friend of mine, Joe Jacuzzi. I think he's now the head of VP of communications for Chevrolet globally. Anyway, I said, can you connect me? And he did. And so, gosh, we've been working with Heinrocket. We're working with them
right now
to this day on the F5. Yeah. So great talent.
So he joins the Venom GT team, really makes some great headway on improving the car with development and everything. And then you have the idea of we're going for some records.
That was, I think, the idea from the absolute beginning.
Be the fastest.
Yeah, to be the fastest. It took us a while to get there. I mean, the idea of the car was 2007. The first car was built in 2010. We weren't really able to do our initial testing till probably 2011, 2012. And then we built a car for a customer. And we're like, hey, can we test your car? And they're like, no, I want my car. I'm like, okay, here's your car.
Right.
But we had a really cool customer, a great guy named Terry Pagula, who actually owns 2 Venom GTs. And Terry had just retired from his oil and gas business. He actually owns the Buffalo Bills and the Buffalo Sabres now. So he's a busy guy. We don't get to see Terry and Kim that much, but they're wonderful folks. And Terry let us do quite a bit of testing on his Venom GT, which gave us kind of the aero package that we knew we needed to go out and try to beat Bugatti. At that time, Bugatti was the big dog at 267 and change, almost 268.
With the Super Sport.
Yeah, and they did that at their 6 mile long airless Seine track in Germany. So we're like, gosh, the longest runway we can get on is at NASA, where they used to land the space shuttle. And yeah, so Valentine's Day 2014 ran 270 one way, couldn't run both ways because NASA was testing some sort of a autonomous spacecraft on the other end, so we couldn't run in that direction. But anyway,
so
yeah, that was a big deal.
That's a whole separate story, but
Yeah.
huge accomplishment there. But funny enough, even maybe a year before that, you had another idea, another
boy.
big idea
Oh boy.
of, well, what's
He is
the
Mr. Big
what's the
Idea.
evolution of the
I'm not looking at the whiteboard, so I
Yeah.
don't know what ideas I had.
So
but
what's
yeah.
the evolution of the Venom GT? And you had some Apple guys that you were talking to about
Yeah.
that.
Well, I mean, one of the frustrations with the Venom GT was the designer that I used on the car. I allowed him to leave too much Lotus look in the car, so people would see the car. We kept the tub, but everything in front of the dash was new, and everything literally from behind the seats was all new, carbon fiber and powertrain and engine management and everything. And so I got tired of hearing about, oh, it's just a modified Lotus. You just anybody can take a Lotus and put a Corvette engine in the back.
Of course.
Not
It's
a Corvette
just
engine.
that simple.
Not even a Corvette engine.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I had a different artist do some renderings of like, how could we take the Venom GT and evolve it? And I'm like, okay, we'll call it the Venom GT Evo or whatever. And so I had a good customer who was an Apple exec, was out in Cupertino and had a Venom GT out there, and I took him and another guy for like a ride through the parking lot. Pretty fast ride through the parking lot. Anyway, so the guy I got to meet was other guy whose name is Phil Schiller, and Phil was the EVP of marketing. So like when Steve Jobs was still CEO and if he was sick, Phil would give the keynote on the new iPhone. So a huge deal, but just a very great, genuine guy. He's become a really good friend. And so I sent pictures of the Venom GT Evo to Phil. He's like, John, until you build, you're not going to get credit for having your own car until you build your own car.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, I just got kicked in the nads.
Yeah.
I'm keeping it clean, honey.
Yeah. So we're going to touch on that later, but
Okay.
just for the timeline,
right.
the Venom F5 was actually born as an idea in about 2013.
So when I put my big boy pants on after Phil told me the truth, I thought, okay, I need to find a designer to design this car, this next ground up car, because we knew after we built the Venom GT, we're like, okay, we built 90% of that car. We're like, okay, we can definitely build 100% of our own car at some point when that time comes.
Yeah.
What year are we in now?
So we just finished 2014.
Okay.
So 2014 business is rolling, and
something just going back a little bit.
Yeah.
So 2009 we started tuner school.
Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of totally forgot about talking
huge
about
story
tuner
right
school.
there.
Again, that's another podcast, but just trying to give the listeners and viewers kind of a chronology, a little bit of a chronology in terms of the business, my wacky ideas that I forget most of my wacky ideas until you remind me, and then kind of what's going on with the family and some of the funny stories about, hey, honey, instead of this, instead of a new house, we're going to build a supercar.
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly right. Oh my gosh. Well, now here's the other funny part about that little story. I said, okay, well, I'm never going to get in it. I'm never riding in it.
She was pissed.
I will. I said, I'm not getting in it. I'll never ride in that car. I was so angry.
For years.
Oh.
She's like, honey, I got a Venom G at home. You want to go for a ride? Nope.
Mm-mm.
Oh.
How many years did it from the start till I finally got in Stevens?
Well, the idea began end of 2007, and then you rode in Steve and Tyler's car like in 2013. So over 5 years, almost 6
I
years.
held my guns for a long time.
Yeah.
She did. But what did you say after you rode in it?
Oh my gosh! If I'd have known this was such a great, elegant ride, I would have been.
Bam! Come on!
It was fast and cool, and it was smooth, and I just said, "Oh my gosh, this car is just a dream." I've been in a whole bunch of cars, but I tell you, it's nothing like the new one.
Yeah. So blowing and going, 2016.
Yeah.
Venom GT's not done yet. You set the open top world record, which still stands to this day.
Right.
And then
so back up a little bit. So 2014, the partnership thing isn't really
Yeah,
working
so-
out too well. So just try if we're gonna
Yeah,
keep trying
yeah.
to keep on like a chronological.
14, it starts to not go well.
So-
16 is kind of
So basically, early 15, we part ways with the partner, and we discover that certain things
Yeah.
that we've been told about how the business was being run, we weren't being told everything, and so
Lies.
that ensued issues with the company. I'm just trying to be like very transparent because
Mhm.
this is something that we don't like to talk about because we kind of feel like number one, it's 6 years in the rearview mirror.
Well, and God was faithful.
And
and
a
took
lot
care
and a lot of
us.
stuff that went down at that time. There was an article on a website. I won't even say their name, but there's a lot of false stuff that was in there. But again, we have this partnership. I think people can understand we went through a partnership divorce. When you go
Yeah.
through a divorce, things are messy for some period of time.
Mhm.
They're messy for our clients. They're messy for our company. Very messy for our family. Very hard on our relationship.
Yeah.
But we got through it. The issues that we had, we made them right. Ended up, separating from the partner, and golly, about the time, and that was a tough time. One thing I wrote on the whiteboard over here, around that time in 2014. So Jim Farley, he's been the CEO at Ford for about 6 months. Great guy. He became a client back in that time frame. We did some work on a Mustang of his. I was in Detroit. I was going up there to see the Mustang. There was a bad snowstorm. I couldn't see the new one. So when the Mustang came out in 15, so this would have been
Right.
14. And so I went to Ford's headquarters and had a nice chat with Farley. Never met. No, I'd met him before, but got to spend some time with them. And so next day, coming back here for TX2K, or when we used to have that event here at the track, was a huge track event for us. Snowstorm. No, it was a plane broke. I couldn't get home. And I'm like, I came all the way to Detroit. I got to see Farley for 20 minutes. And here I'm sitting in the middle of the Detroit airport. I can't even get back to our biggest race event of the year. And my phone rings. And it's this 313 number. And I answer it. And this lady says, Mr. Hennessey, Alan Mulally from the Ford Motor Company would like to speak to you. And
That's
I thought,
cool.
Whoa.
Yeah.
What's this all about? And so when I was on the broke plane trying to get out of Detroit, I remember sitting in Farley's office. And here's this guy with red hair and a blue blazer and a red tie walking down the hallway. It was Alan Mulally. I knew who he was, but I didn't really, I follow anything performance related to Ford, but I'm not really into their business. But I knew he was the CEO. And he looked at me and smiled and waved. I'm like, whoa. So I'm sitting on the plane and I'm like, Google, who is this guy? And I found out that he grew up in Lawrence, Kansas, which I grew up in Kansas City. So we're both from the Midwest. I read that he has 5 kids. I'm like, wow, we've got 5 kids too. And then I also read that he was a younger man that he wanted to be an astronaut. I'm like, I wanted to be an astronaut too. So I sent a note to Farley and I said, Farley, I'm like, man, your boss is a cool guy, but I'm like, we have these kind of interesting things in common. Forgot about it. Phone rings. Mulally's on the phone. He's like, John, this is right after we, beat the Bugatti record. And he's like, man, I'd love for you to come up to Detroit and come to my office. And he actually said, I want you to be the CEO of the Ford Motor Company for 1 minute out of the day. And a couple months later, when I came back up, literally, I've got the photo. I'm sitting at the desk. He hands me the pen, and here's his letterhead. He's standing behind me. It was like surreal. And so why I bring up Mulally is kind of in the toughest part of that partner divorce and unhappy customers and unhappy everything, right? Somehow I had emailed, he had just retired. I just emailed him about something. And somehow he could tell I was going through a tough time. He's like, give me your phone number. I'm going to call you. And I was in the pickup line. It means to pick up the kids from some basketball thing. And Alan Mulally called me up.
Basketball practice.
Yeah, whatever it is. Anyway, all very important stuff. But I wanted to kind of go down a little bit of that rabbit trail to say that I thanked him for that. But basically, he has kind of a whole process on how he leads, and I'm sure I'm not doing it nearly as well as he does. But I think at that point, he sent me some stuff as far as like his system that he uses for leadership, whether it was at Boeing or Ford, and now, as a busy retired guy, I mean, he's on the board of Google and other cool things. But anyway, I wanted to kind of share so we went through a tough time with the partnership, but if I had to, besides her and God, if I had to credit one person that I felt like somebody that slowed down long enough to kind of encourage me, it was that guy, Al Mulally.
That's
We wouldn't be here today sitting in our design studio. Our chief of design wife just had a baby, so he just went home a little bit early, but I mean, I'm looking out the window. There's the F5. I mean,
Surreal.
that's all God. It's all very surreal.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, Alan Mulally believing in me and believing in our company meant way more to me than whatever somebody might say negatively on the internet.
That's right.
So,
and during that era, that's a really cool portion of that. And during that era, also a relationship that kind of grew and developed and came to light, and that was very helpful for the Venom GT and Venom F5 programs was Shell Pennzoil relationship.
yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, they had a new oil, a new synthetic that they were coming out with. Their platinum, made from natural gas, or Pure Plus, and so they were looking to kind of help tell stories of like speed pioneers, and I never really thought of ourselves as doing that. I'm just like, that's just
We've got
what we
5
do.
kids, and they all have to go to college.
Yeah,
Right.
that and Daddy likes to go fast, and like Ricky Bobby. Anyway, so yeah, they came along and said, "Hey, we're going to produce this documentary called Breaking Barriers, and we know that you're trying to beat the Bugatti," and so that started in late 13. Gosh, they were right there with us in 2014 when we beat that record, and then we've done so many cool things with them. In 2016, we took the Venom GT with the roof off and went 265 with no top on. That's still a standing record. That still beat Bugatti's convertible record by 11 miles an hour. And then, we started sharing with them kind of our ideas about the Venom F5, and they've been a huge, not just financial sponsor. They're not really a sponsor. Here's the crazy thing. They give us money, and they say, go do cool stuff. They don't say...
They let us be us.
Yeah, they let us be us. They don't like, hey, can you like put this oil or this fuel? Like, no, we just tell our story, and it's very easy to, when whether it's lubricants or fuels, it's easier for us to kind of share that.
That's right.
And it's all real legit stuff. We use their products.
Look, when we go to a runway, I say this. I've said this a lot when we're doing Venom GT tests. I'm like, there's a lot of things to worry about. The driver, the distance, or the critters that are going to come across the road. What's the weather going to do? How's the engine going to perform? Blah blah blah. But I don't have to worry about, is the oil and the fuel in that car the right stuff to help us achieve our goal.
Yeah.
And so I guess, one thing to mention about them that just like I had no idea, we first started working with them, and we haven't really been able to see those people much during COVID, but the way they treated us, the way they treat their coworkers within their company, and Shell's like this very, like, they like to have gatherings. So this is all pre-COVID gatherings and socializing, and we learned a ton from them, and just in terms of like
team building,
and they've been a great partner for us way beyond financial support. Our house was, we were talking about the flooded house here at some point.
Yeah.
I mean, when our house got flooded, Hurricane Harvey 2017, they're calling us up. Hey, do you need like literally? You were there.
Yeah,
we had to take a boat to the house.
We took
right?
a boat. I have a video. We took a boat into the house, and on the driveway, it's like 8 feet of water.
It's like 8 feet deep. You can't even get down.
I got out and pushed us chest deep water. Well, so it's not 8 feet, but
it wasn't the street. But once you get up the driveway, it was 5 feet.
I was pushing the boat out of the gate. That was crazy. So 2017 was an enormous year, good and bad. Right, a house flooded, Hurricane Harvey, but at the same time, the Gen 2 Raptor comes out, the business really starts to explode.
Yeah. So before the Gen 2 Raptor came out, before the flood and all that stuff, again, we had with the exit of the partner in 2015 and kind of the cleaning up the aftermath of that through 16. The Raptor was coming back out, and we had a lot of success with the Gen 1 VelociRaptor. And so I thought, gosh, what's something we could do to kind of remind people that we built the VelociRaptor? And I'm sitting at home watching football or something in the fall. I thought, did Mercedes build like some sort of wacky 6x6 that looked almost like a Matchbox car, so like a kid car? And I had an artist render up like, what would the new Raptor look like if it was a 6x6, VelociRaptor 6x6? And it was born. Kind of threw that out there, and we sold, I don't know, we got a couple of orders. People were like, but we'd also had, I think, within the first 6 months of the Gen 2 Raptor coming out, we had $5 million worth of Raptor business.
It's crazy. Absolute explosion.
Yeah.
And
so
then the 6x6 really kicked off. 2018, we did like 10 of them. We built one for Post Malone.
I want to say probably. So there was a huge shift in the business in that if you were here 10 years ago, there'd be Vipers. Everything was getting 1,000 horsepower, twin turbo this, built engine, and when the trucks kind of came around, the volume and the scale of of our truck and SUV business was off the charts. And we found that the more volume that we built, the more efficient we were, the better pricing we could give our customers, the smoother things ran, the more successful the company, the more growth of the company. And so fast forward from that time frame to now, what are we doing now? 75% trucks?
Probably more.
And we
it's
really kind of
crazy.
made a transition. One time, it was a racer. I would tell people, like, back in the early days, how did you get in that business? My answer was, it was a hobby that got out of control. So we were kind of this out of control hobby for the first 5 years, because every dollar we made, she's working and making the house payment. I'm like, well, I'm going racing.
Right.
True.
Street racing or
So
not.
true.
Yeah.
But then when the kids started coming, I'm like, nah, I can't get away with that anymore. And, so I just.
Except for a few times, but.
Well,
Yeah.
all right. So on the racing thing, my last serious race was right after Cole was born.
Well, it was right after Cole was born. Because
So we had four. We had
was
four under the
brand
age of
new.
5, or under the age of 4. And so I did this race in a Viper, and I had a tire come apart, but it didn't deflate at like 200.
Oh,
And
my
so
gosh.
I'm like, yeah. So I did the Big Bend Open Road race. I didn't get to finish that race. I'm like, I gotta get back on the horse. So I did the Big Bend Open Road race in '98, and that was kind of the end of like doing really stupid, dangerous. Like, I had life insurance, but I'm like, I look back, I'm like, that was completely stupid to do that kind of stuff. Leave her
Makes
hanging.
for good stories now.
Yeah,
but
yeah, sure.
I'm sure it was a crazy time.
Yeah.
So 2017 also, with all that stuff going on, you also debuted the Venom F5. That was the concept model.
Yeah, so we got flooded in August. We're August 17. We're kind of homeless we're living in a hotel with our dogs in Waco, Texas. And then some friends of ours have a place in the country. They took us in for a month, rented a house. It was just, again, we're kind of coming off the old partnership thing. Business is really scaling up. And we had made an investment with Shell to like build a full-scale model of the F5. And so we really, and that was cutting it close. We're going to unveil it at SEMA. So like the biggest way I kind of took my mind off of the flooded house, which no insurance, it was a very expensive loss from the flood. We lost most of our stuff.
Well, yeah.
80% of it. Anyway, was focusing on finishing the Venom F5 design model that we unveiled with Shell at SEMA in November of 17. And again, that's kind of another stair step up to the next level, and started getting orders, and here we are with the F5 now.
Yeah. And so that was kind of the first major step for the Venom F5. But development didn't really get rolling hard on the car till.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's the old chicken and the egg. I mean, so I'm not the kind of, we had the 1 week moment where we took on a partner for 5 years or thereabouts, 5.5 years, but we've always kind of bootstrapped this thing. I don't want partners. I mean, her staying married to me is a hard enough partnership in itself anyway. And the point that I'm making is I didn't want to go out and raise money to build the Venom F5. I just wanted to bootstrap it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
we didn't want a partner. I mean,
and so
we are the partners.
I'm like, if this thing's going to take off and go, people have to order it. So when we showed the design model, golly, we ended up with 5, 6, 7 orders pretty darn quick. Mm-hmm. And then, okay, well, now we have to engineer and build the car. And so that process, there was probably 6 months worth of just interviewing engineering firms and various suppliers, but it really kicked off in June of 18. And I think we would have had the first car done, and we were going to unveil it last year, pre-COVID, at Pebble Beach. So it would have been, a couple-year deal. But then I think COVID, we spent a lot of time on the aero on that car. So we probably spent 6 months longer on just the CFD analysis on that car. So it took a little bit longer to build than we had originally planned. It's like building a house. It always takes longer and costs more money. Mm-hmm. But I think that, again, it speaks for itself.
Oh, yeah.
And so from 2017 to 2020, the business pretty much doubled. It's now got 50 employees. You bring on Nathan Malinick, the director of design, really key addition to the team in the Venom F5 program. He finishes off a lot of the design with the interior and does some amazing work.
Yeah.
The F5 launches in
Mhm.
December of 2020.
Right.
Huge explosion.
Right.
Sell more cars.
Mhm.
And now we're in full-on test mode
Yeah.
to keep going with the car.
Yeah, we have 2 more cars that'll be built in the next 3 months. 2 more cars coming after that. We're going to try to. I think we can deliver 6 cars this year, maybe 7. So 5 to 7 this year. Again, everything in the supply chain, as you know, is slowed down with COVID. But I think it just means you have to commit to things sooner and you have to spend money sooner. So, but yeah, we've been doing quite a bit of testing on the car, and every time we try not to put that much on social media unless we feel like it's relevant, F5 content. And what happens? What's the first question every time we post something?
Where's the F5? When is it going 300?
Well, we've shown. Now we showed the car.
Exactly.
Yeah. Tell me when you're going to go 300. Tell me when you're going to go.
Uh-huh.
350 miles an hour.
So for everybody who's
whatever.
watching or listening, it's coming.
So it's coming. So, but you don't build a brand new from the ground up from scratch car with over 3,000 new parts without having to make baby steps. So
Baby steps.
I would say the baby's getting bigger and can roll over, and the baby can crawl, and the baby can stand, and well, the car just broke 200 miles an hour last week.
Baby's jogging.
Yeah, so I think the first day it was driven, it maybe went 40 miles an hour, and then on our test track here at our place, we're going 150ish, and that's kind of shifting slowly, and that's on like 7 pounds of boost, so it's probably, I don't even know if right now we're even making 1,000 horsepower. But we did a runway test last week to test aerodynamic drag by doing coast down testing. And so we've got this pitot tube up in the nose, and they have all these sensors on the suspension. They can measure downforce and measure the time along with the aero in terms of the atmospheric conditions as far as how long it takes to coast down. That will tell our engineers what our drag numbers are. So we kind of check that box, but we still have some road course testing, some brake testing, and so yeah, I mean, the answer to the internet and social media's question, I hope we're in a position to go out and challenge. I don't want to get into the definition of who has the record or what is the record, but we've said all along we built the car to go 300 miles an hour. So that's a box we feel like we need to check. How much faster than that do we want to try to go? I'd like to have the first car that goes 500 kilometers, which is 310.7 miles per hour, two-way average. Now, where can you do that? NASA's probably not long enough to do that. Bugatti is probably not going to let us into their test track, although we're at a dinner with Top Gear, and we sat next to Winkleman and his head of PR, Tim Bravo, and Tim's become a real nice friend. So we could ask the Bugatti guys. All they can do is say no.
Right, exactly.
Winkleman would probably get fired if he said yes. His boss found out, you did what? These whack jobs from Texas out on our track to beat our record?
Very
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah, no, they're very nice people.
So very bright future for the Venom F5 going forward.
Yeah.
So we've got some amazing new products coming soon. The TRX, Mammoth 1000, the VelociRaptor F250. But, that's something that everybody can see on our website, on our social media. But there's some awesome, funny stories that we have to talk about. Some people just
Yes.
have to know about these.
Okay.
So let's talk about some of them.
All right.
Okay.
The kids mentioned that there was one time that Dad got stuck under a bridge at Texas World Speedway
Yeah.
with an RV.
Yeah. So I had this. I had a Viper.
Now, which kids were with you? Just the three boys?
JP, Emma, and probably Ryland.
Okay.
So this is late 90s. Had a Viper. I had a guy that I knew that had a dealership that sold big rigs and trailers, so the toter homes with the car trailer behind it. And Texas World Speedway, been there a bunch of times, but typically there's a tunnel that you go through to get in there. And I thought, so I kind of go down the hill and I pull up to the guy. I'm like, will this thing fit in there? Oh, yeah, it'll fit in there. And anyway, I'm like going through the tunnel, all of a sudden, as I hear the roof of the trailer getting drug against the roof of the top of the tunnel. And so I had to let a bunch of air out of all these tires. I'm sure the kids thought that was great.
Yeah.
And then I had to back the thing up out of the tunnel and up a hill. I don't know how we got out of there, but yeah, that's probably one of the earlier memories of crazy dad stories.
This is one of my favorite stories of all time. And so tell us about the story when you're picking up kids from school and there's some sort of like numbering system. And at the school auction, you can buy these like parking passes or something, right? What is that story?
Am I telling it? Or
Yeah,
you telling
you
it?
can tell it. You can tell it.
Well, so the kids. So for a long time, when the kids were little, and they would say, "Well, when people ask, what does Daddy do? What do I say?" I said, "Well, we do car stuff."
And then I would say, just tell them that Daddy makes fast cars go faster.
Yeah,
And that's kind of
That's
our
kinda-
little
that's
slogan
kinda
on
where
our
that came
website and
from.
whatnot. Yeah.
and so we were working on, or somehow we had a Ford GT, and
Well, the kids would always say,
Pick
"Hey,
me
Dad,
up."
can you pick me up in a cool car?"
That's right.
Pick me up in a cool
Pick me
car.
up in a cool car.
Right.
So he went to go pick up one of the kids in a cool car, and
White Ford GT.
and
yeah.
I'm on the phone. He and I are on the phone, and I can hear him, and all of a sudden I can tell that he stopped at school. And so we're talking, and he goes, "Wait, hang on a minute, honey. Some lady's knocking on my window," and I can hear him. We're still on the phone, and he's like, "What? What do you mean I can't park here?" "Yeah, I can. I'm picking up my kids from school."
Well, the thing is, I'm not like used to like the whole pickup line thing. Like,
So there's like a pickup
Yeah.
line.
John
You
has
have
to-
to-
he
you have
doesn't
to
there's
get
a line,
in-
there's a process. So
you
I'm
have
sure
to get in
I'm sure
line.
I'm probably coming in hot, a little bit late. I'm probably on the phone, so I'm not paying attention. So I don't know why all these cars are like parked over here, but I'm just going to go around them,
Yes.
and I'm going to go in. I'm going to go in through the out exit
Yes.
and just pull up to the very front because I'm like, I've got somewhere I've got to be.
Yeah,
And
I'm more important than
and I
everybody
didn't
else.
realize that like the first 3 auction spots or the first 3 parking spots, they have like a PTA auction. So
Yes.
I'm just pulling in front of the lady who's got the number 1 slot, and she was pretty particular, but she was not happy about that somebody had jumped the line on her.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So she calls the police. So she's like telling me to move, and I'm like, whatever, lady. And she calls the police, and then she gets a phone
So
call.
and then I get so we hang up, and then I get a phone call from the principal. "Hope, is your husband here to pick up the kids from school?" And I said, "Yes, he is."
I was nice, but
Well, I think that he has caused some a disturbance outside.
I'm just not the kind of person that just obeys by, you
Yeah.
need to do X, Y, Z because I said so.
Okay,
That's like-
so he
anyway.
picks up the kids all crammed in the Ford GT. I'm
So
sure.
I find out how the thing works
yeah.
now.
Uh-huh.
And I said, "Okay, when's that next PTA auction?" She's like, "It's every May." And I forget where I was. I was
You
out
were
of
out
town.
of town.
I was out of town, and she's at the auction, and I gave her explicit orders. I'm like, "You are to buy not just the first spot. You're to buy the first and the second spot.
Mhm.
I don't care if it's 50 grand. We're buying this. I would have paid 10 easily.
Yeah.
I think we ended up paying.
We paid $3 for
Okay.
for the number 1 spot, and then you called to ask me if I was in the middle. Did you get both spots? Did you get both? And it's a live auction, and I'm on the phone with him, so
Yeah.
I lose the second
That's
spot.
okay. That was probably overkill, but yeah.
I love it though.
Yeah.
It was-
Anyway, kind of funny.
Yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
yeah. So what was the first time you ever went 200 miles per hour?
I don't think I ever quite got there on the 3000 GT. I think I was 187 or 190 on radar back in those days. It had to have been a Viper. I'm trying to think if I don't know that I can remember the exact time that I did that, but I do remember there was a Motortrend cover story. We had a red with white stripe Viper. This is probably 97. And a guy that I talked about early on that went to Pikes Peak, C. Van Toon, he was a freelance guy. He was the actual editor-in-chief at Motortrend in the late 90s. And somehow he's like, "Hey, do you have a Viper that'll break to 300 or 200?" And I said, "Yeah, I think I do." It was a Venom 650R maybe. And so he's like, "Can you bring it out to this test track out in California out in the Mojave Desert?" I'm like, "Sure." So I had a customer's car that I borrowed for this deal and brought it out there. And so it's this it's like a circle, but it's an octagon. And it's 8 1-mile straightaways. And he says, "Are you going to drive it?" I'm like, "Yeah." And I just had like a helmet, like
Yeah,
no
casual.
driving suit,
Typical.
no roll cage, no nothing. I'm like, "Yeah, I'm just going to do this." This is just back when, powered by passion. I would rather just go for it than have to really think about it too much. And so he starts handwriting out this indemnification, like, "You indemnify such and such
Yeah.
corporation." I'm like,
Wow.
"Yeah, whatever. That's fine." But that was the reason why I bring that up. And so that was, at that time, it was owned by Honda. Now it's the Hyundai Proving Grounds in California City. And so I remember distinctly, like, I come off that corner. I'm like, I've got to get this thing up over 200. And he's kind of at the end, but at the end of that straightaway, there's a little kink turn on the left. And I remember like seeing where the radar was, and I knew I had got it over 200, but then I had to like lift off and negotiate this turn. I'm like, that's like really, really, really like stupid dangerous. So that's probably one of the times I can say to myself, I didn't soil myself, but I was like, whoa, I just did something that was probably really stupid to do. But on the cover of the magazine, first Viper over 200 miles an hour.
Sells, baby.
Sold a lot of the Venom Vipers back in the day. Yeah. It's cool.
So if you're still listening, still watching, you've made it this far. And
with a good marriage counselor, I might add.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And Jesus.
So we'll land this plane after one question. It's been 30 years. Congratulations, 30-year anniversary. What is the one thing that each of you would have to say is the main thing that you've learned over these 30 years?
In life in general, or the business, or
both? Anything.
I guess both. I mean,
God doesn't ever disappoint us. He never lets us down.
We've been through a lot of stuff.
No matter what we do, He doesn't ever leave us, and He doesn't ever disappoint us or drop the ball. He's always there. He always takes care of us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know, like I said, passion. Slash prayer slash.
Yeah, passion for each other.
Good marriage counselor goes a long way if you want to stay married for 30 years. You know, if you've got a girl that'll get in your race car and climb in and out of a roll cage,
lock it down,
not even complain. You better lock that down.
Yeah,
So
have fun. That's right. It was fun.
And look, it wasn't always fun. There was a lot of stress. I mean, wrangling 5 kids and. Oh, here's SEMA. Oh, we have all these birthdays like right around
every year.
Right around, Halloween and SEMA.
Uh-huh.
And so I wouldn't do any differently. Even some of the tough stuff. It's made us, I think, better people and better family, and really appreciate you and the kids. And we have several of the kids, son-in-law, lots of family in the business.
They come first.
I think I saw somewhere up on the whiteboard, about going to Geneva with the family. That was a funny story where, we were unveiling the F5 at Geneva, and I needed people to work there, but I didn't want to bring people out of here because we were too busy. And I thought, hey, in spring break that week, hey, how would you all like to get paid to go to Geneva?
Yeah.
And we'll work really hard during the daytime, and we'll go have a nice dinner at night. Then we'll get up the next day at 5 a.m. and we'll do it again for 4 days in a row, 5 days in a row, however long it was. And so, I just look at those moments with our family being together, operating the racetrack where, you guys are, somebody's trying to shortchange our oldest at the cash register. He's like, I'm in the 4th grade, but I'm not stupid.
He's like, you did not give me a 20. You gave me a 10. Mom, this guy's trying to cheat. Yeah.
So, I guess hopefully in a way, people hear a little bit about our story. Maybe it inspires somebody else to start their own deal and follow their own passion and take that into some sort of a business that also becomes family business over time. Yeah.
Yeah.
And lots of, so we talked about the past 30 years. The next 30 years, maybe that's another podcast.
That's another podcast.
We got a lot of cool stuff. So we didn't build an F5 production facility, 2 dynos, a director of design, a design studio that we're sitting in, an engineering department, just to build a few more cars.
That's right. That's right.
Well, very, very inspiring. Thank you for the amazing stories. And for me personally, I'm just glad and honored to be a part of it. So what an awesome time. I'm looking forward to the next 30.
Yes.
And it's going to be a lot of fun.
Here, honey.
Yes.
Thanks for tuning in.
All right. And that concludes this episode. We'll see you guys next time.
Yeah.
Drive a stock one when you can drive this.